Welcome back to Building Better Businesses in ABA with me, Jonathan Mueller. It's a weekly podcast about the forces reshaping our autism services field. Learn from successful entrepreneurs, payers, investors, and leaders in applied behavior analysis. Thank you, kind listener, for letting me into your world today. Now on to the show. Guest today is Zach Duggar. Zach is the founder, owner, and CEO of Brain Trust Behavioral Health in Michigan, where he spent 8 years before successfully exiting in 2021. He's now the host of the Freedom Founder podcast. He's a real estate investor, franchisee, and founder of the On Fire Capital Group. Zach is a husband of 18 years, a father of 2 incredible children. Zach, welcome to the pod, dude.
Thank you. Glad to be joining you today.
We first met, I think it was a couple of years ago in COVID, and we were in a mastermind session, which is like this phenomenal setup of sharing information, ideas that was hosted by Dr. Linda LeBlanc and Dr. John Austin, both of whom taught at Western Michigan. But it was sort of through John Austin that we got connected. Now, as I understand, you got your master's at Western Michigan. I don't know if you ever had a class from him or how you got to know John.
I never had a class from him, but I did get my master's at Western, and I did have a class with Dr. LeBlanc, and I'm very, very impressed with her. But the interesting thing was I had spoken with her husband, Dr. Carr, and he had talked about music and how he and Dr. Austin had done some music together, and they're playing a show locally at, I think it was, I don't even know if it was called Old Dog Tavern at the time, but got to go and see that kind of an experimental jazz kind of sound. Very impressive. I would definitely check those guys out again. I know that's not their primary thing, but very impressed.
Well, yeah, Dr. Jim Carr, who is the longtime CEO of the Behavior Analyst Certification Board. I've got to say here, I was fortunate to, I won't even say jam because Dr. Carr is at an entirely different level than I am, but he freaking rips on the guitar. I have heard that John Austin rips on the bass too. Music is just one of those things that like unites us and brings us together as communities. So that's super cool that you had that interaction with them, Zach. Well, you founded Brain Trust Behavioral Health, Kalamazoo, Michigan. You ran it, grew it over the course of 8 years. What did you learn from that experience before successfully exiting?
Oh man, there's a lot that I learned. I did not have a background in business. So coming into this, I just had a strong desire for a few years prior to that. I had a friend and we were talking about different business ideas, joking around about a few of them that would never come to light. But I remember seeing this, it was supposed to be a 3-fold brochure that someone had written out for a group home that they were opening. And it was written across the brochure, like you'd open it up and it was just written all the way across, a lot of typos. And I just thought, if this person is opening a business, I think I can do that. I think I can do something. And so 2012, 13, Michigan insurance legislation went into effect for ABA coverage. I was already contracting with a local county community mental health. So our state for Medicaid, it's all overseen by individual bodies. So like counties specifically, and then regional entities and at the state level. So a lot of red tape and bureaucracy, but that's how it pulled it down into the treatment for the services that are available. I was already contracting, doing a different type of service with them. And I was approached about the idea of starting a service. And so it's like, I don't know. I'm not really sure that a business for me right now. I'm very, very hesitant. Again, no business background. But I had a friend who said that she'd be willing to help me out. At first, I asked her, can I join you? And then I'll just start this area for you. No, you won't want to do that. You won't be satisfied. It won't be fulfilling for you to work for me. You want to start your own business. And I think she didn't want me as an employee because she knew that was a desire I had. So we got going, first child. And I think a big part of that learning process was learning how the system worked within the billing structure and the codes, hiring. I had no idea how to hire an employee and learning payroll, how to get set up with an LLC, bookkeeping, getting a bookkeeper. That's my tip. Get a bookkeeper, keep those things straight. But early on, I learned a lot about business and getting it going. And along the way, had a lot of difficult experiences that opened my eyes and changed me and how I think in regards to how to handle a sticky situation, including the hiring and firing of employees. So that was something early on, I would say, that I was very hesitant about, because I was a part of a school program where you don't fire students, you train the students. They're going to make mistakes. But in business, you have situations where you do have to make those decisions, and prolonging those decisions will make things worse. In some circumstances, maybe not, but most of the time it probably will. So yeah, those are a few things I learned along the way. So much more. You have any other specifics you want to hit on, I can definitely highlight.
Well, I always come back to the movie The Martian.
Yeah.
Matt Damon, I mentioned this before on the pod, that at the end, someone asked him a question like, "How did you get through that?" He said, you solve one problem, and then you solve the next problem, and then you solve the next problem. And there's no way going into any endeavor, and certainly into an entrepreneurial endeavor, that you know everything to start.
Yeah.
And so crucially important, you just focus on each one of those. And to your point, find experts, right? That, that can support along the way. I'm curious that as you got toward the end of your 8 years, what prompted you to think about selling? And tell me more about the sales process.
Sure. Yeah. I think those difficult moments that you encounter along the way, they can be stressful, and also create the lack of sleep that stress can bring. So, health wise, I always think about pictures that I've seen of presidents who have gone into the office with their hair, dark and looking like it was when they were in their early 20s. And then you see that later picture where there's gray streaks. I don't know how well those are staged or not, but I feel like I'm gotten some gray streaks here that I may not have had before then. And I had, over the years, several conversations with different companies that had approached and engaged me in conversation about the potential of selling my business. Definitely was not on my radar. I've talked to many employees that I had at the time and since then that I really was not ever planning to sell my business, because I knew how I operated and how I wanted it to operate. But as things continued to progress and we grew, some of that experience of growth strained me personally and the business financially. And so we got to points where really saw the ship was tipping the other direction in the way that I wouldn't want to. And we saved it back in 2018 with several changes, as you have to do in business. Sometimes you have to make difficult changes because of the financials and things that you projected that didn't come to fruition. But then in 2020, we all experienced something that we didn't expect either when COVID occurred. And then through that, we had a lot of additional stressors, a lot of positive gains with regards to available funding that we didn't anticipate either, which was great, was very supportive. But we had to deal with a lot of changes during that time. And that, coupled with the changing employment environment, we were seeing again that trend that we weren't keeping up. And, as an individual who has such a depth of care for the employees and the staff, I wanted to make sure that our services would continue. I knew it wasn't going to be an easy change, but I knew that if we were to continue long into the future, the way we were going, well, there wouldn't be a long into the future. So I had been in conversations with the company over several years, just off and on, because they'd always been real helpful and real supportive. Even early in the pandemic, they reached out and said, "Hey, we're going through the same things, and we would like to share resources. Come to a meeting." They had so many more resources than I had. and it was something I was grateful for. Ultimately, the comfort level with a company that carried the same values and the same mission, the same vision was what led me to that decision, along with the fact that we were going in a direction that wasn't sustainable anymore. So, very difficult decision though. That was one that I spoke about losing sleep over the years. I probably lost a lot more sleep during that time than any of the years combined.
Well, I mean, like in every year in COVID, it's like dog years, like 7 years, like operating not code, right? Given the
Yeah.
rapid change that happened. I mean, you demonstrate, Zach, an extraordinary level of humility and clearly self-reflection, right? Around what your teams needed, what your clients needed, and that led up to making this decision. What's one piece of advice you wish you had going into the sales process that you know now that you'd want to share with listeners?
Communication is definitely key, and timing of communication. From the start of that process, I had asked the question of, well, when do I talk to my team? When do I talk to my team? When do I tell those key people? And, it was kind of pushed out. And I don't know if it would have been any better to have that conversation sooner. But I think that there may have been some individuals that had different feelings that wouldn't have felt as strongly about concerns for the change. If there was some awareness of the consideration over time and what we needed to do in order to right the situation. I think that's a big part of it, but really strongly consider the organization that is evaluating yours, whether or not you believe that they will carry your mission and vision forward, and being mindful that they're going to make changes. They're going to change things that you wouldn't. There are some people who may not be in the positions they were before. There are people who may choose to leave because this is not the way it was before. You can't preserve that when you have an organizational leadership change and when you have an entity that comes in to take over. So there's some thoughts and considerations I would give to somebody. But yeah, ultimately, you're going to have to make the decision that you believe is best for you as the individual owner or group of owners and the other parties that are going to be involved, which primarily consists of your clients, their families, and your staff. You want to preserve the best for them that you can. It's still something that gets to me when I think about and talk about. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Zach. I mean, in many ways, people use the cliche, like, my organization is my baby, right? The same way I'm sure your first kiddo, right, that you were serving at Brain Trust was like your baby, right? And it is easy for both the emotional and, all the other aspects and nuance that make it complicated to go through that are hard to. Well, one thing that we've never talked about on the pod before, and I'd love your thoughts, is when someone successfully transitions, and I use this term broadly, quote unquote, successfully transition, meaning generally it was their decision, right? There wasn't some extenuating circumstance that forced them to. But it's not like you get there have been headlines about companies who have sold for extraordinary amounts of money. So I get that. But for most independent ABA practice owners, like, this is not money that you're just going to retire to a beach in Tahiti with. And so I'd love to hear, like, how did you think about setting you and your family up financially and the kinds of things that you needed financially to sustain yourself? But also, you got to wake up and do something every day. Right? So after being a BCBA and being a founder of an ABA practice, how do you make a decision about what's next, and what did you choose?
Yeah. First, I want to indicate that I'd read something recently that the prior owner of Card had written after having built and grown an organization. I believe it was over a course of like 28 years, a long period of time though, before she had made that decision to sell the organization. You come into that with the thought that, this is the right thing, the best thing for me, for the organization, and things do shift at times. And so you don't know exactly what will occur, and you have to acknowledge that fact. But Ultimately, yeah, for myself, I would say no, that I didn't gain that golden horse to ride off into retirement from this process. So it was a period of flexibility that I'm in now. And so determining what that next step looks like and ensuring that we have continued freedom financially for our family and for ourselves, but continuing to stay active and engaged. So I looked at this last year a lot of different things. I was trying to evaluate what is that best next step for me and take a moment, breathe, and then, you know, start listening, start reading, start watching. Real estate investing has been an interest of mine for a number of years, probably since we bought our first house. And I started to think about, that gained equity over time, appreciation of value. And also if you had renters that they are paying the mortgage essentially for you so that over time, your increase in equity comes from others paying for it. So you're not doing so fully yourself when it's not a property that you're living in. So we had a couple of clinic locations that were purchased while Brain Trust was in operation that I've retained. And I thought, well, that makes sense. And I started getting involved in some groups and some coaching. So real estate investing is definitely an area that I am spending a lot of time learning about and focusing. I've done some passive investing in some other projects that other people are involved with. And then I'm working on being more actively involved in working with investors myself so that I can help them to gain some opportunities to see their money grow through real assets, through a property that they can directly see. They could even visit if they chose to. And then in addition to that, I got in touch with a franchise consultant. It was through a relationship that I built in the real estate investment world and ultimately really connected with what he had to say about franchises and the opportunity there. So I decided to sign on as a franchisee with an organization called Image Studios. And hopefully this year we'll be opening our first location in Michigan with that company. So I'm excited to see where that leads because we need an income to continue to pay our bills and to continue to sustain it as we move forward. I've not lost track of that interest in entrepreneurship. I've not lost track of that interest in human services. So I continue conversations with people about the needs that exist and how I might continue to be involved. So I'm still evaluating that and with a few different people at this time. And because of my interest in entrepreneurship, I've also started a podcast in 2023 focused on speaking with self-made entrepreneurs and talking about their journey, learning more about what they're doing and their success and challenges along the way in a variety of different fields. So that's kind of where I've shifted with the financial focus and the area of interest in real estate and continue to look at how to sustain things for the long term. I've told my kids I'm going to live till I'm 120. I'm only 40. So I have a lot to go. I definitely can't live off what's in existence right now.
There's a book, Blue Zones, that listeners, if you have not read, you must. It's about those zones around the world. I think there are 7 or 8 of them in which people live to be centenarians beyond the age of 100. One of them, I think, where people live on average longest is Okinawa. And I mean, spoiler alert, what does it take? Yes, it takes exercise and it takes eating healthy and all the things you'd expect. It also takes community and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's something that's so critically important.
Yeah.
But lots to unpack here. Let me come back to the real estate thing.
Sure.
So I think there's a book by, is it Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad? That was written many years ago. In fact, a good buddy from college originally recommended it to me. I mean, I have not been a real estate investor, just to be clear, but it talks about the idea that you described. You're investing in an asset, right? As opposed to a liability. And many people might think of a car as an asset. The reality, like you buy a car, it's a liability. You lose 20, 30% of the value as you drive it off the lot. Yeah. Whereas real estate, generally the trend has been that real estate continues to appreciate, right? So you have capital appreciation of that asset while you're getting this passive income, whether in commercial real estate from, businesses or residential real estate from renters. but it's a neat concept and absolutely belongs in a portfolio of investing. You know what always seemed hard for me, Zach, is I couldn't deal with the dryer went out and I got to go fix it. Or, oh, there's a leak in the office. Can you come figure that out?
Yep.
And I know you can hire management companies, but then they take a huge cut. I don't know. How do you work through like that side of it? Are you pretty hands on?
Yeah. So with the clinic locations that we are retaining ownership of, I have one individual who has a lot of experience in maintenance. And over the years, since owning the one location in Kalamazoo, he has been very supportive in just helping take care of things when they're needed. I can just give him a call. And so I have a few different companies that I'll call for different reasons. So I'm hands-on in that sense, but not hands-on in that I go and fix things myself. There are sometimes we had a child break a window at that building that I had to come out that night, brought somebody else over, and together we put a board in place over the window so we could have that covered while it was still a bit cold outside until we could get that fixed. But as far as other properties that I'm involved with currently, they generally will hire property management companies, and they're looking at the larger scale as opposed to single family homes, so that it lends itself more for property management, and there's a smaller percentage of the revenue that goes to them as a result. So yeah, I don't personally do a lot of the direct day-to-day work, and I can definitely agree with you. I have an aunt and uncle who own some properties themselves over the years that they've acquired, and they spoke to me about some challenges that they had where some mechanicals go out and you have to address it. And, as you do that with a single family home, all of a sudden now you've just lost a large chunk of your income for the year, as opposed to something where you have a larger scale volume.
Well, another interesting thing, and I know this comes up a lot for ABA practice owners, is you're running this ABA business. There's a clinic, and it's like instead of just paying money to a landlord, you're thinking about, oh, should I just buy the property, right? And if you can get it financed, and you assume it's going to appreciate over time, then like the rent, you're just is going back to you. How did you make that decision to buy versus instead of rent your clinic space with Brain Trust?
Yeah. So I was renting an office setting, 3,200 square feet. We were using it for administrative space. And, we were paying $50,000 a year, somewhere in that range. And we are also leasing space from a church for the first clinic that we were operating locally. And when we were looking at, we needed to expand that clinic space and we were paying rent at both spaces, the thought came in as to, well, maybe we can combine and also look at buying the property so that we're not paying rent to a landlord, but paying it directly to ourselves. I really thought about it as I would my family home, where I made that decision years ago to buy a home that we would then pay off over time. And so it was ultimately that same mindset coming into it, and then being able to finance a good portion of that and then just kind of build it out over time and pay it off over time.
I think that's awesome. You've clearly been an entrepreneur many times over, whether or not we might call that entrepreneurship. That is absolutely entrepreneurship. But okay, let's go on to Image Studios, because as I understand, this is a salon, right?
Yeah.
All right. So this is a departure, right? I mean, this is
Right.
different from you being a BCBA, serving your first kiddo in school and other like county Medicaid contracts where you're doing the work.
Yep.
I mean, well, gut check me. I mean, maybe you are but are you passionate about the salon component? Are you doing that work? Or I'd love to know more about what does that mean
Sure.
to be a franchisee and that appeals so much to you.
So the franchisee component comes in where you have a business plan that's already written out. You have marketing that's already prepared and continuously improved. You have educational materials that are present. And you have a team of people on the corporate side, the franchisor side, that are there to support you and help you to be successful, because ultimately they don't make any money if you don't make any money. There is royalties, fees that go to them if you are earning income. So they want to see that be generated. When I talked to the consultant, I admitted to him after the fact that I had no intention of signing on as a franchisee originally. I just thought it was interesting to explore the idea. But he helped narrow my focus down to I think it was 5 or 6 different companies and that were potentially of interest and fit my lifestyle and focus going forward. And this one really did because it became something of a real estate play where I was going to be able to lease space to individual beauty professionals that would operate their own independent business out of individual suites. So in a traditional salon, you have the individual chairs that would be rented, perhaps if that was the model used, but it's more of an open space that a lot of people operate out of. Well, this allows for individual business professionals to have their own suite that they're leasing, sliding glass door in a luxury salon space that is well appointed, chandeliers, beautiful bathroom, selfie walls. So they have the space that they are looking for, but a lower cost of rent for that space. And they can operate without employees independently. And with this concept, it also allows us to have not just hairstylists, but other beauty professionals, massage therapy, med spa. It could be anything really that fits into that category. So I decided to sign on because of the support that's there, the plan that's in place. I know I'm going to learn a lot from people that have a lot more expertise than I do. And I like entrepreneurs. So I'm going to be able to work directly with all of these professionals in their role as entrepreneurs. And this organization focuses a lot on providing free education to those professionals that are leasing space in those settings. So I found that to be very appealing and worked right in alignment with my interest to help people and to focus on that entrepreneurship side.
That's so cool. And just to be clear, if you were painting toenails, I would totally trust you, Zach. Paint my toenails. I go out to salons with my 2 girls. Anyway, what I love about that story is you are empowering and enabling a community of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And it seems super cool. I mean, going back to when we, first hung out in that mastermind, you've been a knowledge share and I've always observed you're hungry and you sought knowledge. So it's really cool that you're creating that entrepreneurial community in addition to being a franchisor. And you're right. Like the idea of having a built-in business plan, knowing that that model has been successful elsewhere, that feels pretty neat. So one other thing that you've done has you started this Freedom Founder podcast that you mentioned. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So that was an idea that I'd been toying with starting a podcast for the last several years. I even bought a microphone and had it sitting on my desk at the office where I would think about, okay, what can I do with this? And how can I share information with others? And so since that space was allowed for me to really consider over this last year about what I was doing next and where my interests lie, that whole idea of talking with entrepreneurs and enjoying those conversations so much that I wanted to give an opportunity to share what their experiences were was ultimately what I decided on. I don't even know exactly how I met this person, but I met a woman who has a podcast accelerator business, Cheryl Plouffe, Plouffe. If anyone is interested in connecting with somebody who can help start on their journey in podcasting. But she had all of the platform figured out, technology and that strategy, continues to coach. And so I wanted to be able to connect with people. And like I said, to be able to have them connect with others through that platform. So I'm taking that interest and actually putting it into action. If I can finally make use of that microphone, once I figure out how to get it to work with my computer, I don't know why, but for some reason, when I connect it, it just doesn't bring the sound through. So I don't know, but that's a side issue. Other options definitely still work. So we'll get there.
The technicals will be worked out. Well, and spoiler alert,
Yeah.
I had so much fun. You and I chatted back in January on the podcast. And it was like, you were doing all kinds of amazing stuff, like broadcasting it live. And you're teaching me all kinds of things. So it's fun to now be a fellow podcaster along with you. And this is the whole notion of the creator economy that we're at right now, right? Where people who have entrepreneurial tendencies want to go out and have a message to share. It's easier than ever to share that message and to build entrepreneurship. So that's cool about the podcast Accelerate business. I'll drop a link to that in the show notes. Let me ask you, what's one thing every ABA business owner should start doing and one thing to stop doing?
I think one thing to stop doing is pouring yourself so much into your business that you forget others. I think it's important that you pour yourself into your business so that you can make sure it's successful and sustainable over time. But it's important to remember that you have people outside of that business that care about you and that rely on you, not just for financial reasons, but also for that mental health and relational health reason. Because after you get to a point where you are no longer involved, when that time comes, what do you have left? You have people that, you probably have grown some relationship with that maybe move on to a different company, or maybe they casually see you or connect with you on social media, but friendships, family relationships are so essential. So that's something that, stop and start doing, really. A combination of both there, I would say. So I guess I'll leave it at that. Stop focusing solely on the business, start focusing on also those relationships outside of the business. So I know it might not be your standard answer that you get, but that's something that I really have thought about probably over this last 12 months to 2 years, is the importance of people.
Amen. So critical. And I find myself, I mean, your business, especially for entrepreneurs in many ways, can be your identity. And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
As long as, look, you recognize that there's a portfolio of interests and a portfolio of people in our lives that are not directly tied to the business. And it just feels healthy and like a more fun life.
Yeah.
Acknowledging all those. So great
Yeah.
advice. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what you said earlier about community, when you talked about those blue zones, there's another book by John Robbins, Healthy at 100, that is the same concept of what are these different areas doing? What make them more likely to have so many more people who are living to 100 or older? And community was a big part of all of those different areas that he had gone and talked with people about, and researched and learned about. So, I mean, that can be you. That can be you here, where you live now, not just in Okinawa.
I love it. Well, I have not heard of Healthy at 100, so I'm gonna have to read that. We'll drop a link to that in the show notes. Speaking of which, Zach, where can people find you online?
Yeah, so you can find me at firecapitalgroup.com is one site. If you want to send me a direct message about the podcast, Zach, my first name, thefreedomfounder.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, Facebook. I haven't done much on Instagram, but I'm there. Twitter, yeah, I'm there, but I really haven't done much there either. But my podcast will be broadcast live on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. So, yeah, any of those.
Rock on. I just got onto the gram, fall of last year. So that's a new thing for me.
Yep.
By the way, for those of you watching on YouTube, because we have a YouTube channel, go check it out. But Zach has this extraordinary ponytail that whether or not you got some gray in your hair, I mean, I'm sure, look at that thing. Oh, that's beautiful. You got to put that into a man bun. I mean, I would pay literally almost any amount of money. I've got no hair left, right? I pulled it out. I lost it over the years. That's why I grew a beard. But I would pay almost any money to put that thing in a man bun. So next time I see you, Zach, that's what I expect.
All right. I will be sending you a photo of that when that time comes.
I love it. All right. Well, are you ready for the hot take questions, my friend?
Absolutely.
All right, Zach, you're on your deathbed. What's one thing you want to be remembered for?
Relationships, go back to that. Being somebody who helped people and always had that willingness, no matter the circumstance.
What's your most important self-care practice?
Prayer, Bible reading. I think those are essential in life for me. I also need exercise. I mean, that's essential too. Physically, it feels so much better when I'm getting exercise.
So what is that form of exercise that you lean toward?
For me, I used to be heavily into weightlifting. Yeah, right. So real briefly, I went through a period of time working with somebody who had done a bodybuilding competition. And so his focus was building mass. I had no purpose doing that, but I was interested in seeing what that could become. So So I gained 30 pounds of muscle working out with this guy. This was several years ago now, but I still do a little more of a maintenance program, weightlifting. And through the pandemic, I started going into YouTube and finding different body weight workout routines. And my wife laughs at the different people that I'll watch their videos and do the workout with. But at the same time, it is a great home workout. And so I continued that, even though I'm actually going back to the gym, because it's just a nice breakup of the routine.
Oh, so cool. All right. So I'm going to disclose. I don't think I've ever shared this before publicly. So I was a pretty good baseball player growing up, pretty good tennis player. I tried out for both those teams. I had moved to a new high school, tried out for both those teams, did not make them. And I was like, all right, well, what am I going to do? I got huge into weightlifting. I won't say bodybuilding. I'm not sure what that meant like 30 some odd years ago. But had a little teeny tiny home, like a bar and a bench press. And all I did was I freaking pumped iron, and I got Muscle and Fitness magazine, and I was like so into it. So Zach, all right, next time in Kalamazoo, in addition to going to a brewery, because you all have some good breweries there, show me your weight routine, and hopefully I don't like back.
Well, yeah, absolutely, definitely. We'll show you the weightlifting routine, but the body weight HIIT style workout, that'll put some sweat on for you.
Those are my favorites, dude. Core, and then like making sure my back doesn't go. That's
absolutely.
Favorite song?
Shine On You Crazy Diamond by Pink Floyd.
Oh,
very long song. Very excellent song. I love the guitar solos, David Gilmour. Yeah.
Uber classics. I love it. Zach, what's one thing you tell your 18-year-old self?
Oh, my 18-year-old self, always seek advice from people who have done this before you. Don't just talk to your friends and people that are your same age, because they don't know anything. Yeah. I've made some other mistakes along the way that we don't have time for today, but definitely seek advice from others, seek mentorship at any age, really.
At any age. So true. All right. Finally, you can only wear one style of footwear. And what would it be?
Teva sandals. I love my Teva sandals. They're comfortable. I've been wearing them since I was 18. I had multiple pairs over the years, and I will try to wear them as long as I can until it gets too cold, and bring them back out when it starts just getting more.
Rock on, brother. Hey, Zach, this was so much fun. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, kind listener. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, can you do me a favor? Give me a rating on your favorite podcast channel. It helps more values-aligned people like you find the pod. Till next time, peace.
Did you hear about the guy whose whole left side got cut off? He's all right now.